now we can really start. Teddy, are you ready to show us your work?
Great. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it just appeared.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to be walking through, I think some people have their microphones on. Maybe.
Some Italian.
Okay, so to give you some context of what I'm showing, I'm going to be showing an alerting section of a check creation form in Grafana Cloud Synthetic Monitoring. And while we have the alerting UI in Grafana Cloud, we have decided to put a GUI into the check form of synthetic monitoring so that users can create an alert alongside a check. And it'll be very easy. There will be a couple of inputs where they can define conditions. And then that alert will be created in Prometheus and appear in the alerting UI. So it's almost like another option or another avenue to create an alert. And the reason we're doing this rather than just direct everyone to the alerting UI is because we are migrating WorldPing customers to synthetic monitoring. And many of them are unfamiliar with Prometheus. They may not be able to write Promql. The alerting UI is being improved as we speak. So we wanted to give them sort of like an interim solution to be able to easily create an alert. For some context, this is what the old alerting section in WorldPing looks like. So we were trying to basically replicate this and make sure that we have parity between WorldPing and synthetic monitoring. And we have not really maintained the service, so the UI is a bit messy here, but you can see the user can create a check. Here are some of the check inputs, and then they can define conditions. If X or more probes report connection errors for X or more consecutive checks, then health is marked as down. And these people, they can type in emails, will get an alert. So we looked into the work to sort of like fake this basically in synthetic monitoring and create these conditions, but then the alert will be built on Promql and appear in the alerting UI. So for the first iteration, and I'm looking for UI feedback, but I'm going to walk through sort of like the progression of iterations that we're going to make, because we're trying to ship value right away, and then we're going to like slowly and iteratively improve it. So the first iteration will look like this. So this is the synthetic monitoring check form, if you have not seen it. And here the user can define different settings for their check. There are different expandable sections. They can configure advanced settings. And then for every check type, there will be an extra setting or an extra section down at the bottom called alerting. And we begin by saying you can set up alerts for check here, but you must visit the Grafana Cloud Alerting UI to edit this alert and add receivers. So this points to like one of the technical limitations that we're getting around. We wanted to ship this perhaps, but force the user to have to go to alerting UI to edit it and set up receivers, because we currently cannot do that in the GUI here. So this is basically what it looks like. You can set a name to identify the alert rule. And then this expression is very similar to what I just showed you in the WorldPing mockup. If X or more probes report connection errors for X or more minutes or hours, and then you can choose the severity. And so this is one option. Another option I have is here, where there actually is a section for receivers. So we not only tell the user that they can add receivers in the alerting UI through this help text, but also there will be a section here, sort of like a placeholder, because eventually we will have inputs here to allow them to enable receivers. But we say, please visit the alerting UI to create a receiver and associate it with this alert. So those are like the two options I'm playing with, either hiding the receiver section altogether or showing this and telling them, basically directing the user to the alerting UI. And then the evolution of this would eventually be that the user can visit the alerting UI to create a receiver, but then they can select a receiver from a drop-down here. So they'll have to first visit the alerting UI, create something, and then they can select it here. So it's making it a little bit better. And then eventually we want to get to the point where they can either choose an existing receiver or create a new one right here in this form. And this is basically like similar to what it would look like in the alerting UI, but we just put it here as well. So that's one area of feedback that I would like, is just like the UI for receivers and also the progression, like if that makes sense. And then the other area of feedback that I'm looking for is this Promql Preview. So as I mentioned, the users of this form are most likely not familiar with Promql. So it may be difficult for them to create alerts in the alerting UI. That's why we're including this in the check form and giving them inputs rather than having them write Promql. But in order to have them learn, we wanted to give a preview of what this check would look like in Promql. And this would allow them to better associate this alert with what it would look like in Prometheus, and then also be able to find that in the alerting UI. So this is a preview, and Awana gave me some good UI feedback on this, but I'm also open to any other suggestions that anyone else has. So yeah.
Just the usual, please be sure to talk to one of the writers for help with the UI text when you get close to done.
Okay. I will certainly do that.
The only thought I had, it's not so much a UX thing, but with the receivers, is that it's something that you usually do sort of once. So you set them up at the start and then you never do it again for years and years afterwards. So it will mostly be about selecting existing receivers.
Okay. See, that's what I didn't understand, because I come from the incident response management world where you could have many different escalation types, like send a notification to Slack, set up like a text message, call me, things like that. So I figured, I just made the assumption that you would want to like select.
It could be. So I was thinking the first, say, maybe 3 months of using, then you might add, oh, now we're going to add this, now we're going to add this. But then after 3 months, then you've sort of set them all up. I think, I mean, if you're going to say page views, how we use it, like, that stuff hasn't been changed for like 2 years.
Okay. That's good
So,
to know.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Daniel.
No, that was it. That was all.
One thing that looks a little bit odd to me is the size of the text in the input boxes under if and for. It seems to be larger or something than the rest of the text that I'm seeing on the screen, like larger even than some of the headings for severity and Promql Preview. So
that's sort of how we've set it up in our design system.
Okay. Yeah, it's just messing with my sense of visual hierarchy here, because it's like I almost can't see the severity and Promql Preview and receivers, because those other things are just so it has it's higher. Okay, you get the idea. I'm tired, sorry.
It's okay. I want to quickly go back to Daniel's point. So I wonder, so I think that makes sense. Maybe there won't be a need to set up a receiver here, but some of the users that were migrating to Grafana Cloud and setting them up with synthetic monitoring, they were running Grafana open source and then running WorldPing on-prem. And so they may not have receivers set up before. So I wonder if this would actually be useful for them, because they're not like.
Yes, I think it's a balance between new users and users that are using it all the time. So I think it's totally valid choice to have it here, make it easy for new users, and it's just whatever, so a section that other people just skip. I think that's fine. So I think in Grafana we chose the wrong balance initially. So you have something similar where you actually had to go, a totally different place and create your sort of, we call them notification channels, but sort of similar thing. And then you had to, go back to your alert rule and add them. there was no way to create them directly from the alert rule. And it is a pain for new users, and once you've been using it for a while, then it doesn't matter, but it is hard for new users. So yeah, I think could be a good idea to have it here anyway.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting debate, is like whether we allow users to create stuff everywhere, and then there's just so many avenues to do an action or a task, versus having it sort of like siloed to one part of the app, but then there's an order of operations that you must follow, and that requires more learning. So
I like your solution on create new receiver here, because I mean, it's not taking up a lot of real estate. And so if I've already got my receivers set up, then I'll just choose one that I've already set up. But if I haven't, I think it's really nice to have the option to do that directly here. It saves me from having to go hunt for it.
So in Grafana alerting, you could create an alert rule without a receiver, which is very useless.
yes, and that's how we have to build it for the first iteration, unfortunately.
I have another smaller feedback. I'm just wondering, you are writing alerting UI a lot in your explanations, and I'm just wondering, are we officially calling it the alerting UI? Don't we just call it cloud alerting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't know.
It's cloud alerting. Officially, Alert Manager is part of cloud alerting. So we can also use Alert Manager if needed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we can just drop the UI part.
Okay.
And all in all, I really like the accordions and the way they work here. I'm just wondering, because you said in the beginning, it just guides you to go through cloud alerting to set everything up. But later on, if you set up stuff here, will it still appear in cloud alerting? And if you set up stuff in cloud alerting, it will also appear here? How are those two places connected?
Yes, so if you were to create a receiver here, the idea is that this would also appear in the alerting UI too. And again, we're building this for users who may not be using the Grafana Cloud Alerting, they're not familiar with it. So we're giving them the option to do it here instead of forcing them to go somewhere else eventually when we get to this point. And then if you set up receivers in the alerting UI, you can choose them here. And all alerts that you create here will also appear in the alerting UI, and they'll be given the same namespace, so that eventually when we add filters potentially to the alerting UI for Grafana Cloud, they could filter to view only or exclude all synthetic monitoring alerts based on the namespace.
Okay, sounds like you already thought of everything. Well done.
Does anyone have any feedback here? So this was my first attempt to show the Promql preview. Oana had a good suggestion to make this a bigger header so that it doesn't look like, it almost is like a separate section, and almost sections that off so that the user doesn't think they can edit it. But does anyone have any other suggestions for this preview?
If it's possible, I would use the query editor there in kind of read-only mode or something, where you could get syntax highlighting of the query, but that's Polish.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would also play with a different background. This is too close to an active input there. It's a bit unclear though what you could do. Maybe you could go in the other direction of lighter than the background or something.
Maybe that's a general issue. I think it could just be a disabled form field.
Actually, now that I think about it, this is using the wrong primary background color. It looks like it's using the card, everything that the form is inside a card color.
Yeah, that is what I was going
And
for.
that's kind of breaking the design system a bit. Because the forms are designed to be on the primary color.
Okay.
Oh no, Teddy broke the design system.
I'm sorry. So I guess I should look for the query editor, but in the disabled state, and just use those design elements.
Yeah, or I think this should probably mimic our normal sort of forms. If look at reporting or other kind of large form pages that have sections as well, I think.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, so good work, Teddy. But just to add on the expression section, like the if, that if statement, from a UX perspective, it's very hard for me as a user to even like see that word. So I'm suggesting probably maybe if all of them could probably be in one line. So like if the text box and then the text.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good. That's
Yeah.
actually a good argument or good use case for the kind of inline form styles, but it might look out of place with the rest because the inline form styles are really designed for these kind of natural language style forms.
Yeah, it's so you might also consider making the if and the for larger, either that or yeah, so the first one, the if 3 or more probes report connection errors, is in the order of a sentence. So I can read that like a sentence, but the second one, the for one, is not. It says for expression has to be true for this long for alert to be fired. Then I would suggest making the second one read like a sentence as well. So like if 3 or more probes report connection errors for 5 minutes, then alert is fired or something like that. Or then synthetic monitoring fires alert.
I played around with some concepts of this, like almost sentence editing, because that's what it looks like in WorldPing. It's just like an inline sentence and you can edit these boxes. And the reason I went with this is because it was a bit more consistent with Grafana Cloud Alerting. So maybe this is something where I can collaborate with Oana on an appropriate solution to make this easier to read, but still like consistent with Grafana Cloud Alerting. I agree, it's a little funny. I can show you some, I'll have to scroll around to find it. Where I had like, this is an example if these conditions are met, and it just looks funny in general, and not that consistent with like the rest of Grafana.
Yeah, I think the problem there is that you have like under alerting, you have the description text that is non-bold but small, and then you have the bold but small, and then you have the normal size. I think it's just too many styles there. And that's why it looks off.
Yeah, there are some other.
But I mean, that could also be just a form styles issue, because like these designs is where we are really doing sort of the edge case testing for these styles and seeing all the potential issues with them. So it's good that that stuff is coming up, I think.
Yeah, so this is the input text style. So I just maintained it here, but maybe I could use like a heading style instead. I don't know.
Yeah, probably it just needs some playing around to see what works the best way. Yeah, so any more questions for Teddy, because her time is up?
Also consider so in terms of consistency, You're trying to be consistent with Grafana Cloud alerting, but I think we need to think about our audience here, because the people who are using Grafana Cloud alerting are not necessarily going to be the same kinds of people using synthetic monitoring, especially at first. So from what I understand, the people who are using Grafana Cloud alerting are a bit more sophisticated and likely to have been you know, to have already done this sort of thing in the Prometheus Alert Manager, and so will be more familiar than the synthetic monitoring people or the WorldPing users coming into synthetic monitoring. So you're aiming, at least initially, at a different level and type of user. So you might think about how appropriate it is to try and be consistent with both sets of users.
Yes, that's a good point. I think we'll have to make some decisions just to figure out how consistent we should be here.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I like consistency, but sometimes it does not make sense. So, because we gotta, you know, meet the users kind of where they are here. But yeah. Anyway, this is great. I agree with. Sorry, I blanked on who said it, but I think just that the accordions are a really nice way of organizing all of this. So.
Right.
Awesome. I'm going to cut off the discussion here because Teddy has gotten a lot of time and we still want to see Torkel's project. So edit query name, Torkel. The stage is yours.
Let's see. So just some background. Queries in Grafana have always had these one-letter names, A, B, C. And this was added very, very early on to support actually kind of being able to refer to another query inside another query, to sort of have like nested queries or have like reuse a query as part of another query. I don't know how many other data sources that actually do this beyond Graphite. There, I actually don't know how many, but for example, here you have this query here actually refers to the first query and sums that one with the B query here, so I can refer to them. There are other use cases for query names. There's also a transform, so you can filter by query name if you're reusing the query result in another panel. We don't have an override so you can sort of match this sort of display settings for a particular results from a particular query, but that's something we could add very likely in the future. So that's kind of use cases for query names. There is another query, also another use case, which is actually why we're introducing this now, and that's also for a common feature called expressions, where you can kind of add a new type of expression in the query tab to transform your query result, which is going to be used for alerting and can be used in the dashboard. So the first really naive, sort of the first simple implementation here was kind of having a hover state with a pen icon and sort of something like, and the input background. The reason I kind of went for something like a hover state here is that this is going to not be like an edge case use case or power use case, and not something you will do kind of every time you edit edit queries. It's going to be like an edge case use case. So I don't want to have like a persistent drop down here for query name or an input field that is always there. So that's why I sort of want to explore this, having this be like a hover state. And then you click and it turns into a real input. And in this case, I'm using our normal input styles, and we only have one input size as well with our kind of core input component. So this is using no custom styles here as well. And you can just change the name, new name, and hitting enter or tabbing away or clicking away, anything will kind of jump you out of this edit mode. So that was the kind of the the start mode, the start kind of idea for this feature. I wasn't super happy with this kind of big input and focus state. It just feels a bit sort of unelegant or something. So I explored a different hover state as well that makes it almost look like a little more like a button, but I don't know. It just and a dashed line. I'm not sure you can pick that up. So this is and a bit different hover state here. The input state is input styles is a bit sort of smaller, and the focus state is not as big. So it's using not our normal input focus here. So that's one option. The other one, then I'm exploring sort of more subtle states here, that where it's just a border and where we have the same background as the element this is on. New name. There is of course a tooltip here that sort of says that you can edit this or what this is doing. Edit query name. That's kind of essential for this version. So yeah, there is one last thing that I'd like to input on. So if clicking on, if sort of when going into the edit mode here, should the text be selected? So if when you start typing, you kind of replace the edit name, the name, or should it just the cursor start at the end? So there's kind of two different ways of going into sort of auto focusing an input. The benefit of having it selected is that you can start typing and it will sort of remove the current name and you can type in a new name. So there's also kind of some options, some small subtle options there of sort of how we want to do that. If are you going to edit the name, or are you usually just replacing the name entirely and then selecting the whole thing automatically is kind of helpful. So I'm not sure. Yeah, this is the one where I just place the cursor at the end.
I like the selection option myself. If for some reason I want to just edit it, then I just have to hit an arrow key to unselect it. So, by the way, what happens to so if I'm querying a different query, and what happens if the name of the first query is changed? Will it auto update?
If you're referring to that query, or what do you mean?
Yeah, like you had an example elsewhere.
No, I don't think that could be something that we potentially add as a kind of polish or extension feature. We don't. The Grafana doesn't really know how data sources are using this, so that's going to be a little bit tricky to do kind of generically across all kind of use cases of the query name.
Any forbidden characters for query names?
It's a good question. It's not really sure yet. So because we're potentially using this in expressions, so there could be an argument to sort of not allow white space, but I'm not sure yet. We should probably we will have validation or kind of ensure that they are unique, because you cannot have two queries that are the same name, which we can currently, because I don't validate against that. But that's something we need to have.
With hovering states, the only concern I have is around accessibility. So I wonder if we can make sure to have ARIA on that entire area, so it's keyboard accessible. And the second thing would be the dotted lines on their own once entering edit mode. I don't think they are visible enough for a vast majority of our users. So I wonder if we can combine the two options, like on hover, keep as it is on what you're showing right now, and in edit mode, just display a regular focused input like we have everywhere else.
A question, is this something that we think the user's gonna use a lot? Like, is this like renaming the query, is this something that you have to do often and like on multiple?
It could be for alerting. It could be something that is common for. I mean, maybe not sort of something that is sort of every alert rule will use, but some of the more advanced alert rules will definitely want to use this to make kind of the alerting rule more expressive and understandable.
So the reason why I asked that was basically one option that won't be, you won't be able to edit it as easily, but it could be to add the pen, like the edit pen, to the left of the duplicate, and then basically open it in like a modal or something.
The problem is we have a pen there already. So query editors that have some raw text modes have a pen already there.
Ah, okay.
So that's
yeah, because yeah.
So if I was going to edit it, I would expect to just be able to, to click on that and change it. But that pop-up with the white border, I find that kind of hard to read. Yeah, that one. The white border around it is.
It's it's the native browser. It will look slightly different in every kind of if you are using an OS X or something, it's going to look a bit different because it's a native browser tooltip.
Huh.
So that's why that's how it looks on Linux in Chrome.
Yeah, well, just in general, by the way, I think that this is a great usability feature. I mean, even if people are not referencing them, then I think it'll be helpful for people to actually name the queries something helpful.
So there is, yeah, I agree. There's definitely a use case beyond just kind of sort of where it's just descriptive, where just kind of adding, it's like adding a descriptive name to a query that describes what it actually returns. So there's a use case there.
Yeah, I agree. Really great stuff.
Yeah, I really love these small, but.
I have one tiny thing though.
But
I feel like if you activate the input editing, or even if you hover over the name, the clickable area is very close to the caret.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe it would be nice to have a bit more margin in between those, so that if you are trying to move through the caret and you cross over the editing, you click on the right thing and don't hit the wrong one by mistake.
Yeah, so that's actually a bit of a problem I did, and it sort of hit here in terms of before the click, sort of the whole bar here acts as like this toggle, and right now that's not true. So right now you have to hit this toggle to toggle it, but and that's more like an architectural reasons and sort of where the click areas are, and the hover area for this, that's also kind of, so the hover area is really big, so you can clearly see that but it's also maybe too big that and we could have a delay for the whole. But yeah, I'll we can maybe, it's a bit tricky to sort of, I don't want to move the name. Because the name should align with these labels.
What about expanding the clickable area to say the first third or so of that top query bar?
For this trigger or for the toggle?
Yeah,
For the collapse.
like so you see how that dotted line
Mm.
actually when you clicked in there, have
Yeah.
that entire portion be the clickable area, because
Yeah.
the way that users are being trained to use stuff is we click in the general vicinity of what we want to fiddle with, and then we can, if it's possible to fiddle with it. So
The only the only downside of extending this kind of highlight area, at least for me, feels like the pen icon gets if the pen icon is at the end of this highlighted area, it gets removed from the actual, it gets kind of distance from the actual name.
okay, so why do I need the pen icon? Because if it acts like a input box, then if it looks like an input box and acts like an input box, then I don't necessarily need the icon to tell me that it's an input box.
Or we
No.
could just replace the pen with a little text that says edit query name, and then we don't need the tooltip either, and the clickable area just gets bigger.
I tested having like a whole, but I tested having like edit query name that appear on hover, but it was really distracting. And I mean, maybe if you have a delay on it, but I mean, I feel like this is like distracting, so I want to have like some kind of delay here so it doesn't flicker as much. But
yeah, and regarding the caret, maybe because the clickable area is like, I think 8 pixels left of the start of query name for the hover. Maybe we can just like cut the left-hand padding a little bit, because I don't think people need that area there. Probably the right-hand area is more important.
Yeah, no, I think that could work. And but just more feedback on one of the primary thing here was sort of this input versus kind of this input versus this input.
So like the last one that you're showing right now, that looks too disabled for me. I think that's really hard to tell that it's an input and that you can edit it. Like it's very faint.
I agree. Can you show the last two again?
So, and this is, oh no, sorry, that was the same. This is just, the this is using normal input background, but not the normal input focus, but it's using, and a different input height. And this is using our everything kind of normal input.
I prefer this one the most. It's my thought was it might be a little jarring that the height of the row expands, but then that also reinforces that you're editing. So I think it's good.
I also think that the focus border is kind of helpful because it makes it clearer to see where you are right now.
If you mean the blue border, then I agree.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's I mean, this is the easiest one. I mean, that's the one I started with. And if we just then focus on the highlights, on the sort of on the highlight styling, dark versus kind of raised highlight.
I think lighter looks more clickable, the dark one. I mean, that already kind of makes it look like an input.
Yeah,
that's the
thinking there as well. This kind of turns it a little bit into something more buttony, and then it can turn into a standard input. So yeah, I'll try to tweak the hit areas here a little bit so that this one is not as affected. I think it would be this is something I really don't know how much people actually kind of minimize queries, how common that is. If we should have like collapse or expand all, that's another kind of interesting question. But yeah, the way it works now is a bit it's a bit small.
Yeah, but like as far as my query editor user research goes, people really want to be able to edit query names. So it might be more important to them than using the accordion functionality. So like,
that's a
I
good
don't
point.
think it will be that big of an issue.
I think you're right. I think that's why I mentioned that. I think collapsing, at least how it works now, is quite of an kind of uncommon action. I think it could be more common if we had like collapse all, and then it would maybe easier to find the query you're looking for, and then you expand that. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Thanks. This was super useful.
Quick addition. I think you mentioned that we might not have an override for the selecting fields from a query. I think we have. It should be added.
Fields returned by query. Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
So
actually you can select. Yeah. So I think we have the possibility.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, so there's more to come on this. I mean, query row, I think related to, I think maybe, I'm not sure. Yes, have you presented any of the alerting stuff yet?
Not yet, because today's session seemed too full. I guess we still have a few minutes left, but I don't want to present without a proper discussion. So probably next year.
But just sort of given the context there's more things coming to this query row, query header row, but in the context of alerting specifically, not panel edit.
Yes, lots to come.
Yes.
We are way over the time Promql originally booked, so it's no problem because we don't have a packed agenda today, luckily. But as always, thank all of you so much. Do you have any feedback how we can make these sessions better?
Just a reminder that if you have comments to post in, or if you're posting comments in the chat of the meeting, it would be better to post them in the notes doc so that the presenter can have them for later.
Yes, it's also usually helpful if your comment is not just, it looks great, or a joke or something, to also address this in the conversation, because then it's easier for others to notice, and otherwise it might just get lost even if you do add it to the notes. So I encourage you to not just write stuff in the chat, but please discuss stuff and participate.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, but thank you for everyone showing up. It's really great to have a diverse group of people, having people from different squads and different places and different levels of familiarity to discuss this, because it's really helpful both for the UX people and for the writers who will eventually be writing about what the UX people are designing, to get to find out what people think about this and what your views are on this. So yeah, keep it coming, keep coming. We love it.
Cool. Well,
all right, great. Thank you so much as always.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, very true. Since most of the UX team is already off next week, there probably won't be anyone facilitating this session. So the UX team would probably just cancel the upcoming sessions until 2021. But if you feel like you have a lot to present and you really want to use the slot, then we don't want to stop you, but someone will have to take over facilitating because we won't be here. So if you want to have sessions next week or later in 2020, do approach the UX team, otherwise we will cancel them.
You can ping me. I'm going to be here next Wednesday, so happy to do that one. If you have something to share, please share do not wait that long.
All right, cool. So then get 10 minutes of your life back. If you have sun where you are, go enjoy it and have a happy Christmas.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jess.
Christmas, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.